Let me be your leader.
Indie scenes are always, precarious based on the whims of the people involved in them, and when they get bored and go away, that scene goes away. But China has the added challenge that free expression is highly regulated. Or not free, I guess. Expression is highly regulated. And not always in the way that is portrayed in the West. Like, ha ha ha, Winnie the Pooh is banned. Like, you can still buy Winnie the Pooh imagery. Bans, we'll get into bans. Yeah, there's like a few blogs out there. 𝗣𝘵𝐶 on Tumblr is one of the more colorfully named. They tend to be a labor of love though, and it really depends on like when one person's interest or the grant runs out. Isn't that the way with the best scenes though, is that they are a labor of love? I mean, the funny thing, or the interesting thing about China is often in one city, it's like the one club that everybody goes to. Even in the bigger cities like Beijing, which arguably have the biggest indie scene of all, it usually, from what we read and hear about, it comes down to like one club that could get closed down at any time. But like when I sung, even when I sung with the jazz group here in town, we ran into some issues where the local police was like, you didn't register your performers, and this performer is foreign, and they're friends with the police, so they didn't get in that much trouble, but I kind of decided it was more trouble than it was worth, so I stopped singing with them because of it. I sang one performance. Something that happened recently was that China cut off access to Bandcamp for Chinese people, which is a kind of puzzling move. And if you read the coverage out there, not very much is known about it, including why. There's some speculation that this indie label group just made a deal with Bandcamp and there's some kind of retaliatory something, but if you read all these articles, you'll notice that they all quote this one tweet by this guy, 𝗖𝗵cie, who is a foreigner who's been living in Beijing, actually working on a super cool sounding comic about the Beijing indie scene that when it comes out, I'm gonna read. But he's the only public comment on what happened, and his comment was basically like, this is a blow for Chinese indie. It's a scene that adapts, but it sucks that it has to keep adapting. And just as an aside here, this is a common feature of Western reporting on China, is that often it's one source that's all that anybody has access to. So the point is, all these reports quote the one guy's tweet. He's a knowledgeable guy, but it is just one tweet. But the speculation seems to be, this is a move, not like the limiting of Facebook or other user-generated content things where like the fear is letting Western thought infect the Chinese. Bandcamp primarily serves these indie Chinese bands to gain a Western audience. So they're not cutting Chinese off from Western influence, they're cutting the West off from Chinese influence, which is a puzzling move. In my experience as a music writer, the English language market, and specifically the American market, is very, very important. I mean, that's where all the money is, I guess. And Americans won't listen to music in other languages. I interviewed a lot of bands whose first language was not English, but they said they would sing in English because they wanted the American market. Of course, everybody's goal isn't American fame. My goal isn't American fame, but I kind of have to wonder if, especially for Chinese bands, international popularity is a little bit easier to manage than being popular in China.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Okay, okay.
你要拍照吗？ Hi. We're meeting the neighborhood children. So when the band Fish was a going concern, Trey Anastasio gave an interview about how it was very important to them to actually be very conscious of how popular they were getting. Like there was an amount of mainstream that was profitable for them, but then amount of mainstream that was too much for what they were doing. And there is something similar that happens here in China, but not for coolness reasons. It's because below a certain threshold, you kind of get to do what you want, but if you get too popular. I think my fascination with all this comes from, as an 80s kid, I grew up with the myth of rock and roll having saved Yugoslavia for democracy. And I didn't realize until we were working on this piece how much I had internalized the idea, if the kids are listening to rock and roll, then it's gonna be okay. It's hard to say what this Bandcamp ban will mean for the scene. I mean, I certainly don't know. But what I do know is, it is like, whenever I look up a band that's on Maybe Mars, which is one of the big labels, the big indie labels in China, they don't have a website, they have a Bandcamp, and it's so integrated into how they promote the music that I didn't even realize like I wasn't on a Maybe Mars website, I was on their Bandcamp. The internet is littered with sites that have thoughtful commentary in English about different aspects of Chinese culture that just one day up and stopped. So these sites, they're active now. I didn't tell you what they are though. Let me just look at the names. Currently active sites include the Tumblr in 2021, China Indie, Live China Music, and of course Beijing Underground. They're all like one person. The aim can't be to protect Chinese listeners from Western music because there are streaming platforms within China that feature all that stuff. China's such a big country, and these little indie oases are like a pebble in an ocean. So it sometimes feels like everybody else knows each other, and we're just like, Peter and I are on the outside peering in, wanting to join the party. But alternatively, it also feels like we're all just like floating on our little buoys, separate from one another. I feel like the vision of what censorship is in the West is like the police come to your house and slap the memes off your computer and drag you to jail, and everyone's afraid of every word they say, which in reality isn't how it's done here. They have a chain of command, I guess, of like different institutions are responsible for the content online on their platforms, or like in a school, what their teachers say. And in the music clubs, the clubs, I think, bear some responsibility for the songs that are sung there. Like they have to submit their lyrics for a live performance to the local PSB before they perform. And it's no less censorship. It just like gives the appearance more freedom, which is what they're trying to do. I don't want to reduce all Chinese artists down to, oh, it's so hard to deal with censorship, because they certainly do have creative concerns as well. 𝗏𝗏 famously busted up because they had different artistic visions. And the Hormones were another indie band from Chengdu, got a song on TV earlier in their career, and then had a major crisis of like, where do we go from here? And then I like them because they rejected TV and stayed true to their indie roots. I wonder too if the incentive to go abroad for Chinese bands is just there's not that many places to play. We've heard like from other foreign bands who live and work in China. Like there's not a lot of clubs, even in Shanghai and Beijing, and there's no performances during the week. So then if you figure you can't just stay in your city, even if it's the main city in the country, but also touring wise, like there's not that many cities that are equipped to have a live band. So it's just like you go on tour every 6 months for like 5 dates. That's not enough to make a living. But if you can tour Europe, that's the whole summer.